So I started this model by drawing out a basic layout of how I wanted it to look. I already had a model that I bought from the $2 shop, so I basically had to base it entirely around that. The model I picked up is actually a dinosaur from a $2 shop, believe it or not, and in comparison to a Warhammer model, he's about the right size and scale, so I worked with that. So all the materials I used to make this model are Warbler, aluminium foil, and epoxy. And that's the two-base plastic thing that you put together and it hardens and solidifies. So I started with wrapping the model with aluminium foil, where I wanted it to be thicker, and then I put a layer of Warbler over the top to make it solid. The Warbler itself was actually it's pretty rough cut. I pretty much just cut squares and then stuck it and pushed it around my fingers to make sure that it was how I wanted it to look. Now this Warbler can be pretty hot when you're pushing it around after heating it up, so make sure that you don't burn your fingers. You could leave it at this stage where you're just sculpting it with Warbler, but I mean, if you really want to get some detail in there, it's going to be pretty difficult. And the Warbler itself tends to have a bit of a dry feel to it, like it looks like it's lumpy and bumpy, so you won't get smooth textures. So that's why I put the epoxy with it all the time, just because it works really well with it and it sticks really well to it. The wings itself are entirely made out of Warbler, and I pretty much just rolled up little tubes and shaped them to be the wing struts. And yeah, I cut out the wings themselves and made it all work. It wasn't too difficult. Although I admit now, after looking back on this, that the wings aren't entirely how I'd want them to be, because they should have been coming out from the bend bit on the wing bone, and I kind of just winged it here, but the end product still turned out pretty cool. Now when I was sticking the wings to the actual model, all I did was heat up the end and push it into place, and it worked perfectly fine. I let that set for a while, and I immediately started cutting out the wing shapes. With the wing shapes themselves, you have to get it kind of nice, and when it's ready to go, all you got to do is heat them up and set them over the top, and they should form fit how you want them. I just wanted to make sure that the arms weren't going to bend at all, so I made the shoulders a little bit more thicker. So as you can see, pretty much just let it sit over the top of the wings, push them into place, and it looks almost perfect. Like, you could leave it at that if you really wanted to. Again, you can add whatever you want, so if you want to get more aluminium to make him thicker, you can go ahead and do that. I've gone and done that kind of thing, so you can easily add more on top, but it's a lot harder to remove afterwards. Now I was making teeth here, so I've rolled up a strip and I've just pretty much ripped them all apart and made like tiny little teeth and spikes. The epoxy works really well when you've got wet fingers. Like if you want to move it around, the water when it's fresh, it's really easy to move around. Otherwise, it can get pretty difficult to spread across big surfaces like this. I wanted to add detail to the wings, but I really didn't want to use too much because this is the last amount of epoxy that I have, so I didn't really want to use too much epoxy, so I kind of just let the wings be as they are. So I decided to make a tongue, which is pretty much just a rolled up strip, multiple rolled up strips, and then I put teeth around that, which was what I did before, rolled up and then separated, and you got a whole bunch of spikes. It was really easy. All I had to do was push it into the epoxy, make sure there was an excess amount so that it sit in properly. If this falls out later on, once it's all dried up, you can easily just glue it and push it back in, and it's easy peasy. Adding detail to the epoxy is really easy as well, so making cuts or like creases and stuff, as long as you're in the time frame where it's soft, it's quite simple. Now with the wings, I just heated them up and I actually burnt them and made sure they looked like they were really tattered. So this is how he looked unpainted. So all I had to do was chuck on a undercoat. I used a matte black, and then I started getting straight into the paint job. Unfortunately, the paint job, the camera died at this point, so I'm just going to go straight into the actual final model. But the paint job itself, if you want to see another version of it, I used the same method on my big old fat man. So go check that out if you want to go see a Nurgle paint job that I've done. So this is it, my Nurgle dragon. The only feedback I've been given is that his eyes look a bit goofy, and I admit they do look a bit goofy, but I kind of like them how they are, so I'm going to leave him. And yeah, I want to get a mount for him, so I want to get like a lord or something that I can put on top of him. And yeah, I think he's pretty awesome. He turned out awesome. He looks cool. So yeah, that's it. If you like this, feel free to support me by following me and subscribing to this channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.